How important is it for a comedian to be a curious person, or to have the ability to observe other people's behavior, or perhaps be a student of human nature?
Absolutely essential. I mean, it's one of the things without which you can't do it. You have to not only be actively interested and observant, you have to have the kind of nature which absorbs things in spite of your attention, in spite of the fact that you're looking for them. You just it's like a computer storing up images. You have to have a very wide range of things so you can make contrast.
Are there some basic requirements that are absolutely essential to be a comedian?
The ability to make someone laugh doesn't hurt. But it's such an elusive thing. I don't know what the requirements are. As I said, they're different. People who have different skills and different tools manage the same end result in spite of that. If the W.C. Fields can do it his way, and Fred Allen can do it his way, then there's can't be.
Is it something you can study, that you can learn?
No, you can sharpen the skills that are involved. That's what I've done. I listened to my earlier work, and I know that now, 20 years later, I'm better at this because I've just allowed some habits to develop that were good for me. But you can study, you can probably learn some things not to do. And I often, when I'm sharpening a joke, when I notice an improvement in a joke and I see what's happened, why the joke is funnier with this word instead of that word, because there are more syllables or less syllables. For instance, 9. What was this one that came up about number 9 recently? I knew that 9 was the right one because 7 had 2 syllables in it and fucked it up. 8 is also another word, ATE, and that can confuse the mind momentarily. 10 wasn't right because 10 is a standard round figure. 9 was perfect. 11 was too many syllables. I knew 9 was right. And 12 was no good because it rhymed. 12 was like 12 bells, but 9. But there's just something innate, and you just learn that stuff.
Is a comedian born? Or
Many of the prerequisites, let's call them, for want of a better word, many of the things, skills and talents, are innate and born in us. And other things, there are born comedians who don't become comedians. That's the perfect example of it. Guys who, come here, Joey, tell him that story about when you cracked into the lady. And this guy's the office clown. He's terrific. I just didn't turn that direction.
how much of the success of a comedian has to do with his ability to handle the day-to-day demands of being a businessman?
Success meaning the actual. No, give me the question, and we're slightly different.
Well, to be a success in show business, you have to be somewhat of a business person.
Yeah, or you have to have someone you can trust who's sharp. I'm lucky now in this stage of my life. I have someone like that. I had some bad experiences with business people, and I was never business oriented, and I didn't even have the kind of the chutzpah to confront a person and say, hey, what's going on here? I mean, that was foreign to my nature. That's not true anymore, and now I have someone where I don't have to worry a lot about it, just a good standard relationship. I'd say you either have to be a good business person in any form of show business success, or you have to find someone trustworthy with a good mind. Good heart, good mind, they're hard to find.
How has comedy changed since you first started?
Well, comedy's changed as a reflection of how society has changed. When I was growing up, the comedians, their basic outlets were, burlesque was just ending, vaudeville had ended. So these guys had moved into radio and movies. Television came along and became a form of radio. So you had these two broadcast media plus movies. Comedy concerts were unknown. Nightclubs were still in form. So what's happened is that the area of expression has changed. The forums have changed. We still have television and movies. We don't have radio anymore. We don't have nightclubs really. But now we have cable television, which is an adjunct to TV. We have concerts and we have records. So that's one thing. The comedy itself has only changed as a result of people's tolerance for ideas changing. Since the Second World War, the country has lost a lot of its innocence. Since the 60s and the, quote, sexual revolution, and the counterculture, people's capacity to absorb ideas that are outside their experience is better. Television has made people more homogenous. So there's a changed public. And therefore, what comes out of the members of that public as they stand up on stage, they know they can get away with more, I'll call it that, or they know they can cross greater lines. There's been a greater crossing of lines since.
Young performers need encouragement.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give to someone just getting started, George?
I tell them, you can't do comedy without an audience. You got to get up in front of people every day of your life. Every night that you can possibly find an audience, 4 nights a week, whatever you can handle. Get out there and be doing your stuff, because you'll never learn who you are. You'll never learn your own comic identity, much less will the material take shape and get better and better. Nor will you learn how to polish. You got to be in front of people. It's one of the few things you can't do alone. You can sing alone, you can play the violin alone. You can't do comedy alone.
George?
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Good, yeah, it's been fun. I like that.
Thank you.
I always learn a few things myself, about my process.